Hey everybody, welcome to Trail Sage, and today I wanted to talk about how to get rid of wind noise using the Micro Windjammer from Rycote. Now, if you've been following my channel, you know I rely heavily on action cam footage for my destination rides and POV videos.
Yeah! Oh my God! Oh, dude, thank you.
And up until a few months ago, I was using a foam protector just like this. In fact, I did a whole review on this very product, but one of the reasons why I made the switch to the Windjammer was for one of the drawbacks discussed in that video. Because of all the cutouts needed for the lens and LCD, the foam doesn't sit tightly enough against the camera. This means anytime you went above 12 miles an hour, you would get wind leaks and the audio becomes questionable. I found this out the hard way when I went out with my buddy Logan to shoot a POV for an upcoming race. During one of the straightaways, we were reaching speeds well over 20 miles an hour, and you can really hear how bad the wind noise was. This rendered the whole video useless, and I had to scrap the whole thing and set up a reshoot. Well, that day I went back and I ordered the Windjammer to see if it could do a better job, and man, you can easily hear the difference. Here's that same trail a week later using the Rycote Micro Windjammer.
Got quite a bit of rain over the weekend. Oh yeah, he's already cooking it.
But I also want to cover why you should consider getting the Windjammer even if you're not riding down trails at blistering speeds. I set up a test in a controlled environment to illustrate how even at low wind speeds, how much the mics are affected by the wind noise. I took my GoPro and placed it on the table and ran it back and forth against the mics to show you the differences. And if you're curious, this isn't a powerful fan. In fact, when I measured the strength using a wind speed gauge, it only measured 5 to 6 miles an hour. Now, I don't know how accurate the wind gauge is, but the point is, we're not talking about a lot of wind here, it's more like a breeze. In any case, I panned the fan back and forth directly in line with the mics, and once again at a slightly higher angle to show you what the raw audio sounds like. Here, take a listen. Then I installed the Micro Windjammer on the top and front mics and ran the same exact test to give you an idea for how well this performed. You can really hear the improvement, and if you're wondering why it's so important to have good audio, I have a good example. Have you ever attended a Zoom meeting and someone doesn't have a good connection? Well, as long as that person has good audio, most folks are willing to put up with a crappy picture, even if that meant them turning off their webcam and all you were getting was their mic. Well, the opposite of that wouldn't be true, right? I mean, you wouldn't tolerate seeing someone speak but not be able to hear their voice. I mean, that would just be unacceptable. So if you're someone who relies on action cam footage like me, then I think using these Windjammers will give you the security of capturing good audio every time.
You have to carry so much speed into that, which is so uncomfortable on a skinny heading into a teeter-totter.
So let's talk about the potential drawbacks. Unlike foam covers that you can remove and easily replace if they get muddy, these are fixed to your camera. Now, that's not to say that you can't replace these, which I'll cover later on in the video, but I think it's pretty obvious it's not as simple as just removing a foam cover. So if you live in an area that gets a lot of rain or you need to do a lot of shooting in a wet environment, these might not be the best option. And if you were thinking, well, I'll just get a protective case, well, if it's a fitted case like a diving case, you might have trouble closing it over the wind muffs. And just to be clear, these wind muffs aren't going to magically get you production quality sound. In fact, if the onboard mics aren't enough for what you need, you may need to look into some external mic options, and that's a whole nother video. Finally, the pricing. The wind muff is about $15, which is a little more expensive than the foam covers. Now, I realize that's not a lot of money, but if you're on a tight budget, you should know that they both work great. But keep in mind you're getting 6 wind muffs and 30 adhesive stickers for that price versus just one foam cover. So if you're like me and you have 2 action cameras, then the Windjammer will actually be cheaper. So now that you know about pricing, let's go over the installation. But before we do that, if you've enjoyed this video so far, why not consider joining me on Patreon? It takes a lot of time and effort to test and review these products, and your contribution goes a long way in creating more awesome videos like this. Membership includes a lot of extra perks like extended cuts, giveaways, and ad-free videos, so I hope you'll consider joining me. Alright, back to the installation. So, for this example, I'm going to be using my GoPro, but if you have a different action camera, the process is going to be about the same depending on where your mics are located. The first thing you want to do is clean the area around the microphones thoroughly. The GoPro has 2 mics, one at the top and a larger one just below the lens. I do this using rubbing alcohol because it doesn't leave a residue. Now grab one adhesive strip. Because the front mic is so close to the lens on the GoPro, I like to trim the top of the adhesive so I have a straight edge to work with. Line up the straight edge with the lens and work the adhesive slowly around the mic. I like to use something like a plastic card to press into the crease to eliminate any gaps. Then I work the rest of it again using the plastic card to apply even pressure all around. Once you're happy with it, peel the plastic backing off, and now we're ready to install the wind muff. Center your wind muff with the adhesive and apply it gently. Once you're happy with the placement, secure it down firmly. Once again, I'm using a plastic card to press the wind muff into the crease. If you centered the wind muff, you should have an overlap where you cut the straight edge. Take your scissors and trim the wind muff to match the straight edge. If you have some overlap on the sides or bottom, you can do the same here. Basically, you don't want any excess to catch on anything and risk being pulled off. Once you're happy with that, press the rest of the wind muff firmly into place and hold it for about 10 seconds or more. Now it's time to give your wind muff a haircut. Push the hairs purposely over the lens to give you a visual of how much you need to trim. Then take your scissors and trim the excess off. You may have to do this a few times to make sure you get all the stragglers. Wipe the area clean and make any more adjustments to the trim as necessary. In the end, you should have a securely placed wind muff covering the front mic with no gaps. The top mic is going to use the same process, and depending on which action camera you have, you may not have to do as much trimming, but on the GoPro, because the mic location is so close to the record button, I like to trim the adhesive and wind muff just like how I did for the front mic. The amount of trimming that you'll have to do to the wind muff is up to you. Personally, I don't like anything covering the button, so I trim that down. Other than that, just make sure that none of the excess dips into the lens, and if it does, trim that as well. As long as both mics are fully covered, you're good to go. But let's say that you already have one installed and now you need to replace it due to wear, or maybe you just want to remove it for whatever reason. First, you'll need to apply a little heat to loosen up the glue. I used a hairdryer on low for about 30 seconds, and then I used a plastic card to work the adhesive strip slowly off the camera body. I would advise against using too much heat here because we don't want to destroy the camera's internals. Instead, I would just apply a gentle heat and just test the tackiness of the adhesive every so often. Remember, we're not trying to melt this thing off, we're just trying to warm it up. Removing the adhesive might leave you with some residue. To solve this, I used a little Goo Gone, and that seems to do the trick. However, make sure you clean the surface with something like rubbing alcohol to get rid of any contaminants. Once you have a clean surface, follow the installation instructions we just covered. Because I'm a mountain biker, I'm often dealing with high speeds and wind noise, and that makes this Windjammer a no-brainer for me. I've been using mine for the last 6 months, and I've been really impressed with the quality and durability, and I would have no problem recommending this product to anyone. And while I know it's more of a permanent application compared to the foam cover, for me in my use case, it just makes sense. I'll leave some more test footage at the end in case you want to hear some more samples. Well, that does it for this video. If you have any feedback or questions, leave them in the comments below. And if you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. And if you want to see more content like this, feel free to subscribe, or even better, join me on Patreon for some extra perks. Thanks for watching.
Got a little bit of a crosswind today. Not much though. We're at about 17 miles an hour. Now we're at about 22, 23 miles an hour. This would be a little bit unrealistic, but man, if it was able to capture my voice, that would be pretty awesome. Yeah, curious to see what that's gonna sound like. Now we're gonna go onto some trail. This is probably about 16 miles an hour, maybe 17 now. So, you know, if it's able to capture this, that's pretty cool. This might have a little bit of a chattery bit right at the start here. So yeah, if I'm talking through chatter and dealing with wind, you know, what's that sound like? Oh, I just took a stick to the shin there, that hurt. This is probably about 16, 17 miles an hour. And what does that sound like? Another concern that I had was the wind muff. I had to kind of trim it down. It has these like long fibers. And you know, I could tell that if I didn't trim them down, they would get caught up in the lens. You'd probably be able to see it. So, you know, did I trim it down enough? Question one, right? And then question two is, are they coming loose, you know, and flying into the screen or whatnot? So that would be interesting to see. This is a typical speed for me. This is probably about, let's see, it looks like it's about 10 miles an hour. So I'll usually do a lot of talking around this kind of a pace. And how does that sound? I got the creek next to me. We have pretty good crosswind right now. We're going about 9 miles an hour. There's a good crosswind coming across the side, so I kind of wanted to see what that sounds like. Of course, now the wind is dying down, but oh well.